This is a presentation on the analysis of the business value of information technology. It is important to evaluate the value of IT investment because the process is timely and costly. Too often, businesses end up wasting billions of dollars on failed IT implementation. These failures are so widespread that they cannot be blamed on mismanagement, but rather on the process used to evaluate business value. The bottom approach of listing a series of costs and savings does not work due to a variety of reasons, such as the failure to account for building, training, and maintenance cost. The approach also ignores the costs of impact on productivity and quality. Because so many factors are ignored, the real cost of maintaining IT is distorted. Thus, in this presentation, we will be using a new approach in calculating the business value of IT. We start by using data from VistA, an electronic health information system which is used by the Veterans Health Administration. It is the largest single medical system in the United States, providing care to 4 million veterans and operating hundreds of hospitals, clinics, and nursing homes. In providing such advanced electronic health record capability, VistA is one of the most widely used EHR systems in the world. The data presented in this table was provided by the Department of Veterans Affairs in 2007. These numbers include the budget of office information, number of records in VistA, and the cost per patient index. In order to evaluate the data, we created scatter plot diagrams to illustrate the correlation of the different sets of information. Using statistical knowledge, we know that the stronger the relationship, the more significant the comparison. This diagram shows the correlation between the cost per patient index and the IT budget. The numbers were taken from the data on the previous slide. Correlation is calculated on a 0 to 1 scale. The closer to 1, the higher the correlation. We are left with the number 0.7963, which shows that there is a relatively high correlation. By taking the square root of this number, we find that R equals 0.89. This number is important, for it will be used later to help figure out our causation. Next, we compare the number of records and cost per patient index to find that there is a moderate level of correlation. Once again, we take the square root of 0.585 to find that R equals 0.76. Finally, we compare the budget and record numbers to find a somewhat lower level of correlation. We then take the square root of 0.3209 to get 0.5. Once correlation between variables is found, we can find causation. There are two potential cases presented in this situation. We will determine if revenue leads to IT investment, which then leads to increased use of IT, or if investment was the driving force behind increasing IT use, which then led to an increase in revenue. By using the R figures from the 3 previous diagrams, we organized this chart, which will aid us in performing the test of causality. The calculations shown here are the equations used to determine this, and the variables represent the different correlations. PCR represents the cost of IT and revenue. PCU represents the cost and use of IT, and PUR represents the correlation between use of IT and revenue. By plugging in the figures from our data, we can calculate to see which figure is closer to 0. Negative 0.12 is closer to 0 than 0.46. Thus, we see that the reduction in cost per patient has led to a growth in IT budget, which has further increased IT use. The method of analysis was limited because of the available data. In-depth, important information such as this may be difficult to retrieve, and working with such limited data may lead others to challenge the validity of the study. The analysis is limited as 3 data points is a very short sequence for calculation of correlations. If data availability allows, longer sequences should be examined. Furthermore, the timeline of data only included 7 years, which is a relatively short time frame and may reveal on a trend that may not always be typical. Despite these limitations, the proposed method is by far less speculative than the current approaches to measure the return on IT investment. Our findings show that this presentation's approach is a useful tool for organizations to evaluate the value of IT and make better decisions.